Hi, this is Rabbi Chaim Kaufman. Welcome to our 199th installment in the Torah portion of the week. We are holding by Parshas Vayeitzei. Parshas Vayeitzei talks about the fact that Yaakov meets Rachel, right? Comes in contact with Lavan. The fact that he marries Rachel and then he ends up marrying Leah, and Rachel gave her the signs in order to trick Yaakov, and he ends up marrying both of them, right? Which is a whole discussion, right? If you kept the Torah before it was given, how in the world can you marry two sisters? Good question, but not for this video. So it speaks all about the kids that he had with Rachel, with Leah, and with the maidservants, and all that. So the Torah tells me, chapter 29, verse 22. After he gets swindled, right? Yaakov gets swindled because Rachel gave the signs that were only supposed to be known to the two of them in order not to embarrass her sister. So he wakes up in the morning, finds out that it's Leah. So what happens? Yaakov says to Lavan, he said, or let's say better, before all this happened, right? Before all this has happened, we know that really the way of the world is you take the older one first. So he works 7 years for Rachel, and he says, Rachel, your younger daughter. So he makes clear he's not going to get swindled. But in the end, he gets swindled. So, chapter 29, verse 22, Lavan gathered all the people of the place. He made a feast. And then he took his daughter, Leah, brought him to him, and he was with Leah, not with Rachel. So it's interesting. Why does it say that he gathered all the people? What do you need to gather all the people for? Right, so says Mori Rebbe, Arav Agon Moshe Machslita, should be well. He brings down in Chochmah V'das, brings down his commentary on Chumash, and he asks this question: why do I need that he gather all the people? So he says that this is the trickery, right? This is the trickery of Lavan. What does he do? He wants to claim he's right. Right? He wants to do it in front of everybody. That really, according to what he said, he wanted to give Rachel. Right? He really promised Rachel. But all the people come. And what do they say? You can't do that. How in the world are you allowed to do that? That's not what we do over here. That is not the custom. That's not what we call the minhag hamakom. It's not the custom. And therefore, Lavan says, what do you want from me? The people have said. People have declared. That's not the custom. So what do you have to do? You have to take the older one first. Right? That's what you're going to do. And that's what happened. Because that is the custom of the place. So, interesting that the claim is, I don't want to look like such a bad guy. Lavan says, so what does he do? He says, this is the way of the world. This is what goes on over here. Sorry, not really the way of the world. This is what goes on over here. Maybe it is the way of the world, but here, we don't allow the older one to be neglected. The older one's going to come first. Now, I would ask a fundamental question. My fundamental question is, does the Torah tell me, Book of Exodus, chapter 23, verse 2, you go after the majority, right? It's an obligation to go after the majority. So I would say, what does that mean? It means the majority for good, not the majority for bad. Because if you tell me it's the majority for bad, then you say, wow, the Torah said you have to go after the majority. Not true. Right? Only when it's good. Right? There's a there's a discussion between one of the Romans and one of the rabbis. And one of the Romans says, I don't remember who, one of the Romans says that doesn't say in your Torah, doesn't say in your holy Torah that you have to go according to the majority. So you have to go according to the majority. You should go like us. Right? You should be like us. Why don't you go according to the majority? So the halacha there is going after the majority. First of all, we said it's for good. It's not for bad. So how can you tell me I have to go according to you? It's bad. And you only go according to the majority when it's good. So there's another thing. When do I say you go according to the majority? You go according to the majority when you have a doubt. Right? If you're not sure, let's say I got 3 pieces of meat. And I know there's a kosher piece of meat in there. I can eat it. Why? Because I go according to the majority. 66%. Right? It's kosher. So who's to say I'm eating the unkosher meat? According to the Torah, I'd be allowed to eat it. Right? So if I have a doubt, I can go according to the majority. So the rabbi says, but that's only if you have a doubt. By us, we have no doubt. By the Jewish people, we believe 100% it's true. Right? We don't need any tricks over here. We believe. We believe through knowledge. It can be proven. Right? It's not the subject for now. But certainly it can be proven. You know that the Torah is true. It's given to Moshe Rabbeinu. He wrote it down. He's only a scribe. Right? He's not allowed to add or subtract, as the Torah book of Deuteronomy tells us. You know, but this is an issue. It's not a small thing. The reason is because secular Jews will say, you're only a small minority. Why should we listen to you? We're the majority. Look, you got Reform synagogues, 2,000 families. 700 families, 1,000 families. Conservative synagogues. You can say you have hundreds of families. And seemingly many more Reform and conservative synagogues than Orthodox. Right? I think the vast majority of people are unaffiliated, but okay. You'll tell me the majority Jews are either Reform or conservative. Or if you live, outside of America, liberal, progressive, I don't know, fill in the blank, whatever it is. But they'll say, we're the majority. So you have to go like us. And maybe some of them, maybe they know a little bit of the Torah. Probably not. But let's say, we'll give them the benefit of the doubt. They'll quote this verse. Right? This verse in the book of Exodus. See, you got to go according to the majority. This is what the majority dictates. This is what we do. You're only 10%. But again, you cannot diverse from the Torah. You cannot add and subtract. You can't make it up as you go along. You can't pick and choose. So what will they say? They'll give excuses why that's okay. But in the end, they can say, we're the majority. Majority rules. Now we explained that that's not true. But even if it would be true, and the Torah tells me clear, many, many places, the Torah tells me this is forever. This is forever. It's not a 5-year option to renew. If it's forever, there's reward, there's punishment, a lot of interesting things written in the Torah. But if it's forever, then why would the Torah want me to go according to the majority for bad? That's only going to lead to assimilation. That's only going to lead to intermarriage. And that's going to be a disaster. Now, if the Torah tells me I have to go according to the majority, wouldn't I think it's the majority that's going to help Judaism survive? That's what I would think. If you want to tell me you go according to the majority, and the vast majority are assimilating and are intermarrying, if you could tell me that they can pass down Judaism to the next generation on a regular basis, and Judaism will survive, and you can make it up as you go along, I'm all ears. I'm ready to listen. Right? I'm ready to have a discussion. But we see assimilation into marriage, right? More than 60%, more than 70% in some places. It's a disaster. So, if you would show me, you would bring me proof that it works, and it works the majority of the time, I mean a high percentage, then I'm willing to hear. But if it doesn't work, how can you tell me go according to the majority? That doesn't make sense. So I could answer over here. Comes along Lavan, right? And Lavan says, "What do you want? What do you want from me? This is majority rule." But you see, Yaakov really has him cornered, because Yaakov could answer, "I asked for Rachel, your daughter, Bitcha Ketana, the younger daughter." Right? You're not going to pull the wool over my eyes. You're not going to play semantics over here. But that's what he does. Because he says, my hands are tied. Really? I promised you Rachel. Right? That's what my Rebbe here says. I promised you Rachel. I should have given you Rachel. But you know what? The majority rules. And the majority says, can't do that. It doesn't work. And therefore, I cannot uphold what I promised. And I have to give you Rachel. Because that's the way of the world. Now, the way of the world could destroy. It could break down Torah values. You know, look what happened in Sodom. You know, once people steal, and they're able to steal and get away with it, society has to be destroyed. Society cannot survive. Because by Sodom, it's not like they weren't guilty of immorality. It's not like they weren't guilty of idolatry, murder, other things. But that's not what sealed the deal. What sealed their death was stealing. In stealing a little bit where they wouldn't get persecuted. So people would come in, take a little bit, someone else would take a little bit, someone else would take a little bit, until they stole everything. And if you do that and you can't get prosecuted, it's over. Society will never survive. So, over here, Yaakov's toast. Seemingly, because Lavan's got a good claim. And the claim is you go according to the majority. Now you see what the majority do in the world in general. You know, people are atheists. People scoff and mock, you know, at religion. Even though it's one of the signs. You know, it's one of the many signs we're living in the Messianic era. You know, it's unprecedented, the levels of scoffers, mockers, you know, against Torah, against God. And the irony of all ironies is, if a person would be well learned, and they can go at you verse for verse, and they really understand, and they bring up good arguments, I could hear. Right? You know, massive debate, go through the sources, analyze. The problem is, the majority are ignoramuses. Right? They don't know anything. But the chutzpah is, they say what they want, and they don't care if they don't know anything. They just want to ram it down your throat. And say, I'm right, and oh, this doesn't make sense. This is so archaic. Yeah, but I bet I can show you proof that the Torah is from God. I bet I can show you it's not a big game of telephone. Right? I can show you the importance of oral law. I can show you proof of God's existence. But you're not going to be interested. Why is the person not going to be interested? Because that's not where they're holding. They would rather say, oh, I just think this is wrong. Okay, you want to back it up? You want to show evidence? I don't have to show evidence. I don't believe in it. I don't know. It's not a way you argue. Normally, if you're going to argue, you got evidence. I got hardcore evidence it's not true. You want to tell me I got the prophets say like me, the Talmud says like me, later commentaries say like me, somebody says like me. Within the sources. Not just what I think, because I don't care what you think. What you think is irrelevant. You want to prove me wrong? Show me in sources. Show me where it's wrong. What will the Christians do? They'll manipulate the sources. They'll misquote. They'll misrepresent. So, this is all not about how to prove it's all true. Right? The essence of what we're saying is that I don't care what the majority says. Right? What the majority says, 100%, is irrelevant. So you'll say, isn't that elitist? How dare you say you think you're right and other people are wrong? It's not elitist. Right? We certainly believe we're right. Why do we think we're right? Because we have proof that we're right. Proof from science. Right? Proof from technology. There are many, many different ways to prove that it's true. That even though there are 80,000 different religions, right? We only know a few of them, but there are about 80,000 different ones. We can show how inherently the Torah is true. We can knock down the other religions, quote unquote, as long as I find faults in them, and I find mistakes. Once you find a mistake, it cannot be given from God. But again, that's not really the point over here. The point is, majority doesn't rule. Right? In this way. Because the majority in this case are going to assimilate, are going to intermarry, and they're going to be wiped off the face of the earth spiritually. So that's not elitism. Those are facts on the ground. That the further away you go from religion, you intermarry, you assimilate. And the Torah does not want you to do that. Torah warned you many times not to intermarry, not to commit idolatry, many, many times. Even if Talmud Torah is written by man, 4 authors and a redactor, and they said all this. So you're going to tell me it's only for that generation? It's only when they moved to Israel? I mean, you can come up with any number of bad explanations. But obviously we believe the Torah to be eternal. So the majority has to be the majority for good. The majority for what the Torah says. Because otherwise, then it's just ownerless. Then people can say what they want. Right? Which is what most people do. Because, they can't read it. They don't understand it. They never learned in their lives. But they have very strong opinions. Unbelievably strong opinions. And the main reason, because they want to fulfill desire. And the main reason is that they want to justify what they do. Oh, come on. You really think this is true? You really think mixing wool and linen, you think really God wants that? In these laws of Shabbos about ripping toilet paper? Come on, you really think God cares? I don't know if the Torah is true. If the Torah tells me that there's a right way to do things, there's a wrong way to do things. The Torah tells me there's a mitzvah to listen to the rabbis. In one generation, all these other people are going to be wiped off the face of the map spiritually. Because of intermarriage. Because of assimilation. So at the end of the day, even if they're the majority now, what's going to be later? They're going to disappear. Spiritually. You can tell me you have numbers. And how many synagogues, they're all dying. Conservative synagogues, no question about it. It's a mourner's minion. They're all dying. I should go according to the majority like them? It doesn't make any sense unless you prove to me and you show hardcore evidence that what you're saying is true. And it can be backed up. Because if it can't be backed up, and it's just this is what I feel. So when it comes to the world of debate, you get an F. You go, oh, that's really harsh. Why do I get an F? Because that's not an argument. what I think. If it's not based on anything, it's based on the lifestyle I want to justify. I don't care what numbers you have, it's going to disappear. Totally, it's going to disappear. So we'd rather have quality than quantity. Right? You have the Reform movement say anyone can join. Doesn't matter how much you don't know what you keep, what you don't keep. Right? For years they were saying you don't have to go through conversion. See, but now they're telling you do. Because most of the congregants aren't Jewish, at least they should go through conversion. But what kind of majority is that? It's a majority based on what I think. Now again, if you haven't learned, which most people haven't, most Jews haven't, and they don't know anything about anything when it comes to Torah. So I would ask a very simple question. Why in the world would I take what you have to say seriously? Because people see this as being elitist. And they say, oh, it's your way or the highway. There are other brands out there. I agree. Up until 250 years ago, everyone was Orthodox. Right? These brands are brand new. In the last 100 years. A little more than 100 years. They're not holding according to tradition. They're uprooting tradition left and right. Making it up as they go along. So if you want to do that, okay. You're going to say, what, you don't think we're Jewish? Well, if you're into Mary, and the mother's not Jewish, yeah, then the person's not Jewish. But you say, well, if I light a Hanukkah menorah, what do you care? I don't. But don't, that's just saying I feel good about my Judaism, I want to light a menorah. Okay. I want to eat gefilte fish. Okay. I'm going to eat matzah on Passover. Maybe I'll read from the Haggadah. Okay. But you don't think that's a good thing. You're right. Why not? Because it's fake. Why is it fake? Because you're not upholding what you're supposed to do. Most people don't know, and I'll just throw this out there because we're getting closer to Hanukkah. Most people are not aware that when you light the Hanukkah menorah, you light from right to left. That means if I have a menorah in front of me, and I have 8 candles, 1, 2, 3, 4, right, etc. First candle I light is the rightest most candle. And then I go from left to right. So on the 8th day, I light the 8th candle, and I go backwards. If you ask most secular Jews, how do you light the candles? They're not going to know. Because they this is the way I do it. That's not the question. Question is, what's the right way to do it? Right? So the Talmud tells me the right way to do it. The rabbis tell me the right way to do it. It's a mitzvah to listen to the rabbis. So if you don't know how to properly light Hanukkah candles, this is something relatively minor. There are so many other things you don't know also. So why do you have a big mouth and you open it up and think you know better? The only reason is because you want to say, I don't have to listen to you. I'm going to do what I want anyway, and I'm going to nail you, and I'm going to put you down, and all that. Okay. Right? That's what people do. But in the end, does that show in any way, shape, or form, just because what their heart tells them and how they want to justify it, does it say in any way, shape, or form that that's true? Does that prove anything? No. So you can say, I don't have to prove anything. I'm going to do what I want. So you come back to the same circular argument, which I've been saying for a long time. Either God gave the Torah Mount Sinai and the Torah is true, or it's fantasy. If you want to tell me I believe in fantasy, I'm not interested in looking at the truth. Okay. But it doesn't mean what you're doing is right. And it doesn't mean that we who believe we have the truth are crackpots and are fanatics. People can claim that, it just means they don't know anything. I think it's the ultimate in chutzpah for someone to make claims about something they don't know about. Unfortunately, people do it all the time. People will say things, let's say, in politics, I don't know, in economics. They'll make statements. Sometimes maybe they'll say, just so they won't get hammered, I don't really know that much, but I think this. Now, if you go to someone who's an expert, they're going to take what you say with a grain of salt. Right? Maybe, you know a little bit about the subject. Maybe. But why in the world should an expert take you seriously what you have to say? You're going to say it's polite. Okay, I'm not saying you can't have a conversation. But if you're arguing with someone with a PhD and you don't know anything about the subject, you're not wiping out the person with a PhD. You're just not. That'd be kind of foolish to say. You wouldn't do it in any subject. Except Judaism. Why do people think they can get away with it? Because they want to justify what they do. They want to be the cardiac Jew. That's what they want to do. And they won't even let you engage them. In seeing where the truth lies. Because if someone says, you know what? I'm really good. I'm not a bad person. The person can jump on that and say, okay, maybe that's true. What's your definition of good? Is euthanasia, mercy killing, is that good? Or is that murder? Right? You enter that conversation, the person's going to say, I'm out. I'm not getting in this conversation. Because you break them down, they know they can be had. If they know they can be had, and they now realize even what you say is a little bit true, and it makes them think, maybe their life's a sham. Maybe their whole life's a sham. And they're married to a non-Jew. And they have non-Jewish kids. And the list goes on. It's hard reality to see. So, of course they don't want to look into it. Of course they're not going to get in the conversation. Because they don't want to admit what is right. Because if they admit what is right or possibly right, that means their life's been a sham. That means their life has to change. Right? And I had someone tell me many years ago, if I looked into Judaism and I find out it's true, I'm not interested. Because if it's true and I have to change my life, not going to do it. So, I'm not going to look into it. Okay, that person was intellectually honest. Everybody else, bunch of fakers. Oh, I really think, I think this and I think that. Tell me I'm ignorant. Tell me I don't really know. I'm not really sure. I just want to do what I want to do. And that's it. And I'll cut you a lot of slack. I won't even yell. Because at least you're honest. Right? And I had someone a while ago finally admit it. Right? They finally admitted it. I said, just admit. You don't want to keep the mitzvahs. You don't want to keep Shabbos. You don't want to do any of these things. Because it's inconvenient. It has nothing to do whether it's true or not. And I pinned this person in a corner and I said, listen, I'm not gonna sit there and go through this whole thing. Just tell me. Just say that what I do is only because, I want to do what I want to do. It has nothing to do about truth. Right? It's about not being inconvenienced. And they admitted it. Right? 100%. They admitted it. I mean, it's kind of embarrassing. Right? I would think it's kind of embarrassing, to do that. But okay, that's me. But that's where they're holding. That's 100% where they're holding. So I wanted them at least to admit it. It's not about, you can't prove it. I think, I know this much better. And, we're going to have this awesome debate. You're going to bring me sources. No! You want to justify what you want to do. So even though I do have a problem with that, at least you're admitting the obvious. You're admitting, I'm not going to get in the debate about truth. This is not about truth. Because they're not going to say, I have truth. Because what are you going to answer? Show me. How is what you do true? according to the Torah? Where does God say you're allowed to pick and choose? Go through a whole laundry list of things. They're not going there. They are not going there. So what they're doing is they're saying, I don't really care. And I'm going to do what I want anyway. And I don't want to be inconvenienced. Now, if people would tell me that, they're being honest at a certain level. They're being honest because they're not saying, well, I don't believe it's true. Oh, you don't believe it's true? Let's see. Do we have proof? Make an argument it's not true. Show me where the flaw is. If you can do that, we can have a discussion. But most people are not going to be interested. Because the stakes are too high. All you have to do, you start proving them wrong, their whole philosophical outlook is out the window. They're going to be stuck now. Right? Famous story with Ori Zohar. Rabbi Ori Zohar, famous Israeli actor, used to make fun of people at the Western Wall, calling them cowboys and this and that. And started up with one of the rabbis there. And the rabbi challenged him. The rabbi challenged him and says, you really think you know? You really think, we're just a bunch of fruitcakes, fanatics, whatever? And he challenged him. And he said, let's have a talk. He said, if I can prove you wrong in your beliefs, then you have to become religious. Now, a person could have, Ori Zohar could have said, yeah, fine, I'm going to wipe the floor with this guy. Not going to be a problem. And he could say, even if I am proven wrong, I'm not going to be religious. Could be. But he said it's going to be so easy. Fine. More than happy to have a discussion. They had a discussion. They had more discussions. And he was proven wrong. And he turned his life around. Right? One of the most famous actors in Israel. So I would say most people are not intellectually honest like that. But he was. So, when you see what goes on in the world, and you see what the majority say, the only majority we care about is the majority according to the Torah. The only ones going to be left standing are going to be Orthodox Jews. Nobody else. Everyone else is going to be wiped off the map spiritually. So even if they are a majority now, and in the Orthodox community, having 6, 7 kids on average, secular community 2, or whatever, eventually we're going to be the majority. So many people assimilating into marriage and not having any kids. So the future is pretty bleak in the secular world. But they're still going to hold on. Why? Because then you're going to have to look like me. And that's definitely not going to be good. Right? It's really not good for their world outlook. Right? So the challenge is, where are the real thinkers out there? Where are the real people that want truth in the secular world? Not too many. They may talk about it, but they're not really serious. They're not willing to really look at the information. You can take someone like Einstein, Stephen Hawking, which they have, no answer for certain aspects of evolution, which they won't have answers for. And I would say, find the missing link, answer me in science. They say, well, we don't have the information. So what's the other alternative to evolution? The Bible. The Torah. So I would have said, and they claim, God forbid, look inside the Torah. Maybe the creationists are right. Well, what's your alternative? Evolution. Okay, find me the missing link. We don't have a missing link. But we'll find it. Until you find it, you have no proof. So I would be obnoxious and say, hey, Get me proof! Show me proof right now. Oh, you don't have proof? I have all the proof you need. It's right here. No, I can't look at that. Why not? I'm a scientist. Let's go back. You're a scientist, and according to science, you have no proof. So that means you're not really intellectually honest. And the reality is, most people are not intellectually honest. Let's call a spade a spade. The vast majority of people out there, all they want to do is keep a little bit of Judaism, and in the end, they're going to say, you know what? I don't want to be inconvenienced. And that's that. So I want to remind everyone I have a class on Duties of the Heart every Tuesday, 9 o'clock New York time. I have 2 Q&As every Tuesday and Thursday, 10 o'clock in the morning New York time, 5 o'clock Israel time. Sunday morning, 9 o'clock Eastern time, I have a class on Book of Leviticus, chapter 14. Every Monday, 2 o'clock, I have a class on controversial issues, Tanakh Talk, every Saturday, 2 o'clock Eastern time. There's a class on Pirkei Avos. I have my conversion classes. Anyone interested in any of these classes, find me on Facebook, Beyond Orthodox Conversion Judaism. You can send me an email, rabbichaimkoffman@gmail.com, RABBICHAIMCOFFMAN @gmail.com.